have a jazz feel to me. Like, it's got nothing.
What is
this? Cool cat. It's called Cool Cat. I feel pretty cool right now. If I had my skateboard in hand, I would feel cool as hell.
The guy playing this 100% is a white guy with dreads.
What? Yeah, I for sure.
No pee.
And he's got like a half sleeve that he just didn't quite finish off because he
Oh,
ran out
give
of
it up! That's me, you jerk!
Hey man, I'm still working on it.
Wait, that's not. You don't have dreads though.
Maybe he did
Yeah,
at one
I
point.
just got nappy hair. Does that count?
I like it.
It's close. It's like half-ass dreads. I like it.
All right. Now that I see the cameras on our beautiful faces, that is my cue to welcome you to the theScore Esports podcast. This is the show where we leave all the plays of the game, the nitty-gritty stuff behind, and we talk about some of the bigger storylines in esports this week. I am, of course, Colin McNeil. In the studio with me, as usual, of course I am, is Kyle Chatterson.
Yo!
And Ryan Stratton.
Oh, hey, it's me.
We also have a fourth body.
Right. Fresh meat.
A disembodied voice. Okay, now he's on camera. We've got Josh. He is going to be joining us. Well, actually, he's going to be joining the League of Legends podcast called The Nexus, which goes live every Tuesday. But for now, we've nabbed him. We've brought him on the theScore Esports podcast. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
How you feeling about this whole place? Yeah.
Well, I have to run the stream tomorrow, so I'm really terrified. So I'm just enjoying my time right now as not the person running the stream.
Josh, for the millions and millions of fans of the Nexus podcast, why they love Lisa, they love Gabe, why Josh?
It's a great question. I don't even know the answer to it. Honestly, I was told that I had to be on the podcast, so I'm going to be there.
And there you have it, folks. Because we said so.
Now, not to plug.
We hold on. Only you. I'm not. I said so.
Kyle is the boss. It's true. Not to plug the written word in audio, but Josh has actually been working on a really cool series called League of Lessons. I don't know if you guys out there in internet land have got a chance to check this out, but basically he was a total League of Legends noob, like legit, had never played the game since beta. He went back in, he's chronicling his experiences, which include the successes, the many failures, and all the flaming.
No, I think I'm down to like a 43% win rate. So yeah, no, there's plenty of failure for sure. But
listen, people out there like Nash Lewis, they want Noah, and listen, Noah is a very busy man.
Who is Nash Lewis?
He will be here shortly with us.
He's in our live chat on YouTube.
Yes. So in about 5 minutes, we're going to have Noah Whinston from the Immortals join us on this podcast.
Yo, shout outs to Nash Lewis, my boy, holding it down in the esports in the comment section. Noah Whinston, the CEO of Immortals, as my man Ryan said, is going to be joining us in T-minus what, 10 minutes?
Yeah, he's 1:30 our time. So
yeah, okay. Speaking of
ESL,
esports, can we just get a shot of the lovely calendar that I bought for the room?
I
kind of
feel like that's not esports. Like,
yeah,
it's the World of Warcraft movie.
Are you saying that Warcraft esports are dead?
Wait, guys.
That?
We might be.
Oh,
we might be wrong.
we've got someone calling.
Yeah,
got
we might-
a
do
call
you want to
here
accept
early.
Noah right now?
I
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Cool. I guess.
So,
Hello, Noah.
Hello.
Oh,
hey, so we're live and on the air, just so you know.
Sounds good.
Right on. Well,
So
welcome.
this is Colin McNeil. I'm the guy who's been chatting with Shane over email. I'm here with Kyle Chatterson, Ryan Stratton, and Josh, who has no name.
Awesome.
Yeah, Josh.
My last name is Burry.
Yeah,
just
it's
Josh
Burry.
Burry.
Okay.
That's right.
How's it going,
Meet
Noah?
everyone. It's going well. How about you guys?
Not too bad.
It's going really well. Just want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and chat with the theScore Esports podcast.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So how you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's a beautiful Monday in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask where you're at. You're in LA?
Getting off the wrong foot, rubbing in the nice weather.
Yeah,
We've got rain up in Toronto.
It's actually nice in Toronto today. I don't know what he's talking about, to be honest.
You're right. I haven't looked outside for a couple hours. All right, come on.
All
I
right.
don't know. They're like a few clouds. It's only like 65.
Listen to this guy. Come on.
Yeah, man. Spoiled
He's
with
trying
that
to
weather.
he's trying to find the silver lining in this Monday, okay? Just move on. What's next?
All right. Let's get to the serious stuff. We are live. We're burning airtime here. Noah, I just want to get a sense from you. I mean, you're the CEO, you're the owner. Who better to tell me who are Immortals in your own words? Give me Immortals.
Sure. So organization level, team level, which level are we talking about?
Oh.
I want organization overarching.
Sure. So as a lot of people know with the history of Immortals, we were kind of this first of the new wave of what people call the VC teams. So this new wave of new investors are coming into esports. We were the first one of those teams to arrive at the big show. And I think what we bring that other organizations don't bring is kind of a laser focus on fan experience, right? We're aware of all the inputs that go into that, whether it's winning or content or picking up marketable players or trying to meet fans where they are and building community. But ultimately, as an esports organization, our goal is to make being a fan of Immortals a really good and fun experience in whatever way we can do that. And so that means we're going to work harder than we've done in the past. It means we're going to try and work harder than every other team out there to interact with our fans on a personal level and show them in an organization what they want to be seeing.
After talking Tainted Minds last week, this is refreshing, and I'm super excited for whatever happens. Here we go.
I'm really glad, Noah, that you brought up the fan aspect, because I was going to ask you later on in the show, like, how do you build that fan base? Because you guys came in sort of out of nowhere, and it must have been quite a challenge to say, like, hey, we're Immortals. You should follow our brand. You should be a fan of us. You should tune in for our games.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I think that's probably harder at this point in time than it ever has been in esports because, 2-3 years ago, you had a lot of teams that were kind of just happy to be at the show, right? You had a lot of teams that weren't creating content, that weren't really running social media, that weren't trying to build or doing their best effort to build fan bases. And I think now, once you have this new wave of the VC teams, right, everyone from 10th place Envy up to 1st place TSM is doing their best to kind of capture their piece of the pie. So I think for us, it's about kind of being the change we want to see, and so making sure that we're more active and we're more engaged and we're more involved, again, not just on a putting out content that talks to fans, but creating communities and platforms where we can talk with fans and fans can talk with each other, because I think that building a fan community and creating a self-sustaining fan community is what really sets something up well for the long term.
So that being said, you guys have come a long way. Where do you see Immortals as an organization in, say, 5 years, which in esports time is a million years, right?
I don't even know why you're asking. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Elon buys us and we're playing esports on the moon or Mars. If 5 years from now is as long in esports pretty much as the LCS has existed.
Yeah, that's pretty much as long as League has been in the professional scene. To loop back around to what you said about building a fan base and building a really engaged community with your teams, one thing that I find interesting about Immortals is I see a lot of teams kind of going out and doing land grabs into a ton of different games, a ton of different athletes, just picking up anybody. Whereas, as you mentioned, you guys have stayed very focused. Do you think you'll continue kind of on that route? You guys have League, CSGO, but you're not picking up a crap ton of lower level teams in games that don't really have an esports presence yet. Is that going to continue, or do you think that's a kind of a flawed approach that people are taking, just trying to grab everybody?
I do, and that's not to say that working in smaller esports titles is inherently a bad thing, right? We have a Vainglory team, but working in smaller esports titles, the reason that we would do that is if we have a really strong and committed relationship with the publisher. So Super Evil Megacorp in Vainglory is an example of a publisher that we really enjoy working with because we think they have a good long-term vision, and so we assume that one day it won't be a small esport anymore. We assume that one day it'll be a maybe medium to large tier esport. But I'd say that the approach of kind of picking up teams in as many games as possible and getting up to 10, 12, 13 teams, that's what some of these orgs are at. Mm-hmm. That kind of horizontal expansion, I think, just is really hard to support. There's no way that unless you have multiple people in charge of it, in charge of just the competitive end, you're going to be able to maintain decent performance across that many games, unless you want to just go out and try and buy the best free agents every year and hope that works. Mm-hmm. And it also creates a big lack of focus within each of those games, right? So if you have 12 to 13 teams, it's just, unless you have a massive content team, it's not possible to create enough content for all of that. Then, if you only have one social channel that you're putting out stuff along, I guarantee you that people, if your social channel is 100,000 followers and 60,000 of those are from your LCS fans, they don't want to see Heroes of the Storm content. And so for every game you're putting out, you're kind of, increasing the total size of your fan base, but you're also diluting the interest in any one of your games that your total fan base has. And I think that's a big problem because eventually, if you're putting out 90% content that someone doesn't want to see and 10% content that they do, they're just going to stop following. Or at the very least, they're going to stop engaging. And that's where you can kind of get into trouble. And that's honestly, I think, where you get esports orgs that have 100,000 to 200,000 followers and they're getting like 5 likes on a tweet.
Yeah, I think it's a great point.
It sounds like, Noah, that you really, or Immortals rather, really values the engagement factor as sort of a success metric in esports. Is that, I mean, as important to the brand, as important to the organization as, like, I don't know, winning games or doing well in the LCS?
Honestly, from our perspective, like that's the ultimate goal, right? Creating an engaged and committed fan base, and winning games in the LCS, performing well in the LCS or anywhere else is one path to get there. But we're not the organization that's going to come in and say, hey, our only goal is winning championships. We're going to sacrifice everything to win championships, because while everyone says that, very few actually commit to it. And that's just not a sustainable way to create a brand for an organization or run an organization. Like, no organization can win forever, and that's okay. But the organizations that last forever are the ones that can capitalize the best on their winning, but then also be honest and transparent with fans when they're not winning.
And no, I just want to talk about you've always talked about wanting a long-term and holistic approach to the Immortals. You're talking about investors and longevity and stuff like that. What would something like franchising the LCS do for people who want to invest or for the longevity of a club? I mean, you just seen Team Liquid on the verge of getting relegated. So, what would be the benefits of franchising?
So I think the benefits, and I won't necessarily talk about LCS particularly here, right? These are benefits that exist across any esport where there is a centralized league. I think having those centralized and stable leagues is a really important step. A lot of the time when I talk to sponsors or investors from outside of the scene, what I hear is that they're interested in esports, but there's kind of this paralysis of choice, right? Being interested in esports is like being interested in sports. There's 1,000 different places where you can put your money and attention and time. And so any league that's trying to attract outside non-endemic interest from outside of esports needs to kind of make the case for why they are a particularly attractive place within the esports ecosystem, right? And League of Legends, that's frankly an easy case to be made. It's the biggest game. But outside of League of Legends, and sometimes even within League of Legends, publishers, leagues, teams need to be able to make the case for why their little corner of the universe is the corner of the universe that people outside of the industry should care about from a business perspective. And so having centralized leagues rather than kind of decentralized tournament systems, and having locked-in leagues rather than promotion and relegation, these are all steps that you can take to garner more outside interest. And I'm not saying that that's the purpose of it, right? Like, I would never say you should franchise a league just so you can get some more investors in your ecosystem. But that's one of the side effects of it. And so I think that, again, without talking specifically to the LCS example, but talking more generally across esports, that type of locked-in league does definitely increase stability and increase the security of an investment.
Now, as long as we're sort of theory crafting about the LCS, what do you think about a more standardized draft approach to acquiring players? Because right now it's sort of crazy how teams pick up players and don't pick up players.
I mean, like, as a fan and as someone that would have a big say in how we draft, that sounds incredibly interesting. But just from the business perspective, I imagine that completely reshuffling LCS rosters would be tough. I imagine that doing anything like this without having some sort of locked-in league in place would be tough. And I also think that players wouldn't be a huge fan of it. Like, as much as fans would like it, and I think fans would be the only group of people that liked it. Which doesn't necessarily mean I'm opposed to it, but I think is a big barrier to anything getting done.
I do think that's an interesting take with the players. I mean, what a lot of people gloss over in professional sports on the traditional side is, the people are traded not necessarily giving any care to where they end up. So how important has it been in your experience so far? I mean, you guys basically put together your first roster was obviously incredibly successful. The second roster, you guys are coming together. How important do you think like the home is in terms of a team for these players, like them wanting to play for your organization as opposed to having no say?
Oh, it's incredibly important. I mean, look at TSM and Cloud9, who, because of their reputation and brand recognition, are always able to recruit the best players, even if they aren't paying the highest salaries. And, that's not saying they're not, because I don't know that much about TSM and Cloud9 salaries. But consistently, year over year, they've managed to recruit some of the best free agents and sign those free agents to relatively long-term contracts because people want to be there and play for those brands, Cloud9 and TSM. And it's really impressive. So I think that it's massively important, and I wouldn't even just say that players would be against a draft because they have no control over where they end up, but also because inherently a draft has to come with salary controls, right? If you draft someone, they don't have the ability to go out and then get their highest offer and accept that as a salary. They have to accept a salary that you offer them. And so I'd say both for salary reasons and for where you play reasons, players wouldn't really be in favor of it, and they don't really get to choose their teammates either, and that's a big deal also. I'd say, like, in a world like the LCS that existed 2 or 3 years ago, I think a draft would be a lot more important, right? Because you kind of had these, like, 3 to 4 really good teams and then a bunch of not really good teams. But this year in LCS, there's been more parity than ever before in North America, and I think that's only going to continue going forward. So I'm not concerned about trying to rebalance the competitive level of LCS because I think that it's already pretty balanced right now.
Well, that I guess leads me to ask, what is your take on the state of NALCS right now? I know you just said it was balanced, but is it everything it could be? Do you like where the teams are right now and the structure and all that stuff?
I mean, things are. I'd say for maybe the first time, you have all 10 teams who are pretty committed to being in League of Legends long term, right? They're not just biding their time until they can sell their LCS slot. And you have 10 teams that really understand at least the bones of what it takes to build a successful and happy competitive team, right? You don't have teams functioning coachless anymore. You don't have teams like with team houses with no internet. I think when I talk about LCS as kind of the I don't know, I guess the apex predator of esports leagues, it's because I think it's one of the few leagues out there that has 100% penetration in terms of every owner and every team kind of understanding the philosophy and the basics of esports in terms of team management. So I think that's done a lot, right? Like, look at LCS today versus 2 or 3 years ago, and you see, I mean, you don't see any winless teams or one-win teams. You also don't see any teams even close to undefeated, and I don't think that's random. I think you have a lot of teams with very similar structures. You have a lot of teams that can beat each other on any given day. And at this point, the improvements in teams are going to be incremental, right? Like, it's going to be small improvements. Who can get the extra 1 or 5 or 10% advantage, not who's going to go 18-0 and who's going to go 0-18.
Now, speaking of team houses without any internet, last week on the podcast, we had one of the ex-members now of Tainted Minds, and we talked to him about that whole unfortunate situation and all the stuff that's alleged to have happened. So that leads me to ask, I guess, what does Immortals do to ensure their players are well taken care of, their health, their safety, and their environment?
I mean, like, we're decent human beings, so that's a good start.
Good start.
I don't know. We talk about that like it's easy, man, but it seems like it's a challenge for a lot of people.
In esports,
I mean,
maybe, yeah.
It's not, and I'm not even taking a side on that particular dispute because I don't have all the evidence.
Yeah, of course.
And like for every tweet longer that comes out, kind of damning one side, the other one responds, and then Reddit swings over.
What an esports humanitarian.
So I'd just say from my perspective that I guess at a very core level, I mean, even if you take the Tainted Mind statement on its face, which you don't have to do, but even if you did, you'd have to attribute what happened to a massive breakdown in communication. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key, right? As long as communication avenues are open and honest and transparent, like, there's no way for a situation to ever get that bad. Like, I'm not going to claim that everything's always been perfect in all of our team houses and all of our teams, right?
Yeah.
There have definitely been difficulties. Like setting up a team house is a more labor-intensive process than I think a lot of people realize, just because of it, like you're dealing with internet providers. It's never easy, and so I think that at least from our end, the idea is as long as you're keeping those lines of communications open, as long as you're talking with the team about what they need, what they don't have, and how you're going to get it to them, things are never going to get that bad, right? Players are reasonable people, just like most team owners are. And if they say, hey, we need air conditioning, and you say, okay, air conditioning is on the way, or okay, but here's why we can't give you air conditioning, and here's your alternative, then that's how compromise happens. And if you don't have that conversation, then one side or the other is going to be pissed.
So, what do you think about team houses? Because that's a concept that's kind of always interested me, and it's something I feel like is a bit unique to esports. Are you like? I imagine you're. I don't want to speak for you, but I imagine you're in favor of team houses right now. But is that always going to be the case?
So that's a good question. Honestly, so I am against team houses in that I think in the medium to long term, players should not be living in the same place that they practice.
Thank you. Yes.
Done. Cut it. Cut the stream. Wrap it up.
Not quite. Not quite.
Go ahead.
But and this is where I'm a little more undecided, I may still be in favor of players all living in the same house.
Okay.
So
just not
would you be
practicing.
talking about having like essentially just two locations then, right? You're talking about having a team house
Right,
and then a
right.
team office and just commuting between the two. Okay.
Correct.
I mean, I'm not against just what Weldon brought up. He obviously loves the coaching angle of team houses. You get everybody together. You get to kind of deal with them, any issues that arise, all pretty easily. But I mean, for me, I think the idea of a complex kind of works. I just think about me as a 18 or any of you guys, anybody really is 18 to 22-year-olds. Like I wanted some space, like just now and then. I'm like I was social enough, but
Yeah. And I think what's really cool is that what I've heard Noah say before in some of his interviews is that you've got to diversify your worth, right? So you're not just trying to ream somebody and put these guys out for 1-2 year careers, make everything that you can from them as a promotion or as a team. I think that again. I don't want to speak for Noah, but it seems that he's trying to diversify people's worth. He's investing in the longevity of esports and even like some simple things like tweeting at people from other organizations. I think that he's a real champion for esports in general across the world, and I think it's a good example.
Well,
Yeah, I think you call that esports world champion, actually.
Yep.
I think
The best daddy of esports is what someone on YouTube said.
that's the best comment so far.
yeah.
and I think that at least when it comes to the living situation, one of the difficulties that esports faces is, and just to be completely honest, like the type of athlete that exists in esports really oftentimes has no idea how to take care of themselves. And this is like very much in contrast to traditional sports athletes, right? When you hit the NBA, you've already played college basketball, high school basketball, like middle school basketball. You have so much training in like, how to eat healthy and how to exercise and what kind of training you need to be doing
And how to deal with
show up on
losses
time.
and stuff. Yeah.
And you just don't have that in esports. And that's not to say that like I'm unhappy with the current level of athlete in esports. I think the guys we have on Immortals and the guys off of Immortals, they all work incredibly hard. They probably put in longer hours than most basketball players. I just think that it's not an issue of effort. It's just an issue of kind of experience and knowledge about like, how do I feed myself healthy things? How do I like go out and work out at the gym without someone there to tell me what exercise to do? How do I budget my time so that I'm not like losing a ton of sleep or showing up late to where I need to be? And those are some of my concerns when it comes to going into like more individualized housing. Just players, players not wanting to do it a lot of the time because frankly they're kind of living the good life in a team house. And then second, the consequences of that happening if they do go off and live on their own and can't handle it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting just with esports athletes versus traditional sports athletes because we have as humans, and if you're in a traditional sport, you're just going to get tired, right? You can't train 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day or whatever. Like you're going to physically like burn yourself out. Whereas the esports kind of takes away that. Obviously, you can get mentally burn out. You can like whatever. You can get tired in other ways, but you don't have your body basically saying I'm done for a little bit. Like you got to take a break. So to kind of go along with that, we've seen relatively short careers for athletes in esports so far. They're getting longer, obviously, as the scene stabilizes. But what do you think needs to change, or does anything need to change to start seeing these guys have 8, 10, 15-year careers?
I don't know. I think it's kind of bullshit when people reference the lifespan of esports pros in the current day, just because. And to be very, you have not seen the retirement of a pro in LCS since the influx of new investors into the scene. And there's a reason for that, right? I think people kind of attributed the reason that pros fell out of the scene earlier, Link retiring, I don't know, some of the guys from Vulcan retiring, whatever the case it is. I think people attributed that to, you just can't hang with the young guns for more than 3 or 4 years. And I think that's completely wrong. I think what happened was people decided that sacrificing 14 hours a day and living in a team house wasn't worth $25,000 a year. And now they're not getting paid $25,000 a year anymore. And miraculously, even pros that aren't performing that well aren't retiring. I wonder why that could be. But yeah, no, I think this stuff about ability to compete competitively in esports on a short-term basis. I think the idea that a career has to be short is ludicrous, right? Look at the Virtus Pro guys in Counter-Strike. And I know that in Counter-Strike there are less frequent game changes and you don't need to live in a gaming house, which means you're more able to maintain a family life outside of it, and you're more able to continue playing as you get older, and that's true. But even in League of Legends, right, your career is not going to be limited by how long you can keep playing. I think up until a certain point. I think your career is going to be limited by how long you want to keep playing. I would just look at some of the examples in LCS now, right? Xmithy is, I think, one of the older pros. He's been playing for forever. Lemon Nation, one of the older pros, been playing forever. And maybe these are two examples where people are going to jump on me and call them not the most mechanical players, but I still think that their mechanics are at an acceptable level for LCS. Both of them made playoffs without being significant liabilities on their teams, and both of them are putting that experience to use pretty frequently in helping out their teammates and giving them the knowledge they need to succeed. So I think League of Legends is maybe the only game in which you could still make the case that shorter career spans are necessary because of the frequent game changes and patches, but I think even then, it's less an issue of people being forced into retirement and more an issue of just people not wanting to live that lifestyle anymore.
Yeah, that's what I think was actually driving people away from the esports lifestyle was, if you look at PewDiePie or Dyrus or something, it definitely doesn't seem like it's a physical ability to not play the game anymore. It's the mental stability. If you look at in Dota, right? There's similar games. I'm going to get so much hate over that, but Fear. Fear's an old man. He's my age, and he's still pretty good. So I think it was very much just, is there other options that people are able to do? And
I guess the other thing is, same thing we've talked about before, and we've talked about even in traditional sports, when there's 100 million people that want, there's 100 people that will make it pro, you've got to keep in mind that everybody's out there working really hard and chomping at, those people's legs who are on the starting rosters. You think anybody at a challenger level doesn't see themselves in the LCS in a few years? These guys are definitely working hard. They're grinding. They're putting in 12, 14-hour days. And after, imagine, 5 years of doing that, that's got to get kind of old.
Yeah, it's just mental burnout, right? Yeah.
Well, Noah, I wanted to circle back real quick and touch on something that you mentioned a few minutes ago, which was about players and life skills. I want to talk a little bit about life after esports and get you to tell me what Immortals does for players to secure sort of that those life skills that you're going to need. Like you said, you got to know how to do laundry, right?
Yeah. So I think ultimately, and whether this is the right or wrong approach, I guess I'll get some immediate feedback on, but also I think it's still kind of TBD, is consistently at Immortals, we've kind of opted to give, it's kind of the teach a man how to fish rather than give him a fish, right? So I think for us in the short term, we do our best to kind of give players the tools and access to tools that they need in order to create those life skills for themselves. And ultimately, we can't force them to take us up on it. Easy example is consistently we've introduced our players to financial advisors, to CPAs, to agents to represent them, stuff that makes sure that, sure, there's a life after esports, but let's make sure that your esports earnings are going to last you as long as possible. And we have some players that take us up on those things, which I'm happy about. We have some players that choose not to take us up on those things, which I'm less happy about. But ultimately, like, there's no amount of lecturing. I can be a dad, right? But there's no amount of lecturing I can do to make a player care about something that they don't care about, or that they're not willing to commit the time and effort to. So as much as I'd love to say, like, every single one of our players understands the fleeting nature of esports and wants to be able to preserve as much of their money and fame as possible so that they can do something after they retire from playing, I think we've only had a few players that are thinking long term and are willing to kind of sacrifice time in the short term in order to plan for that. And outside of making esports, and honestly, I think this is one of the same problems. Like, outside of making esports earnings and fame last as long as possible, the problem becomes what happens when a player like doesn't know what they want to do after playing. And I think that's been a really common occurrence across almost all of our players, is just again, like, they're very focused on the short term and they don't necessarily have a plan or a desire to do something specific after they're done playing, which kind of makes it hard on our end to help them plan for that. And that's less of an excuse, right? We still tried to set up general programs. We have good relationships with most of the collegiate esports programs. A lot of these guys, they're certainly good enough to go back to school at a reduced cost or for free if they wanted to go back to school and play on a collegiate esports team. But I think right now the bubble of esports is super intact, and I don't mean that as like a speculative bubble. I mean that as like when you're inside of esports, it's really hard to think about things outside of esports. And that goes for me, it goes for competitive staff, it goes for players. So I think there needs to be some more long-term thinking. I'm just not sure about how to get players to do that if they're not already interested in doing it.
And no, I've got a burning question, man. I mean, you're in your early 20s. Yeah, burning question. You're in your early 20s. You've been in the spotlight for a few years. How the fuck do you have your head on your shoulders, man? How do you have it all figured out at such a young age?
Because Ryan doesn't.
Yes, I know. Honestly, how do you know? How do you have it figured out?
It's kind of imposter syndrome. It doesn't feel like I have it figured out, right? Like, I don't necessarily practice what I preach. Do
as I say, not as I do, right?
It's the best approach.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess. Like I said, most of what I talk about is like, it's all conjecture. All anyone ever talks about in esports is conjecture. We have so few actual test cases to prove if someone's right or wrong. So I guess we'll find out, right? Like, these are just assumptions that I've built over a few years in the industry. Some people have been here longer than I am and agree with me on parts of it and disagree with me on parts of it. And I guess we'll figure out who's right.
Have you had any sorts of like adversity that you battled, or any mentors that stand out to get you where you've been, to get you where you're at now?
I mean, I think calling out one person does others a disservice.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, certainly there are like different people I've learned different things from, right? So from some of the newer team owners, brought in this really fresh perspective on the idea of turning an esports team into kind of a platform, being able to build those fan communities and transfer those fan communities around to different titles, which I think is something really important. From the old school team owners, I've learned a lot about like the core focus of competitive, right? Not just how do you pick up players that you think will work well together, but then how do you actually create the systems by which they work well together? As well as a lot of stuff around the structure of the industry, right? Like, in order to understand esports today, you kind of need to understand where it came from. And as much as I could read headlines just like anybody else, like, the inside perspective on the development of esports as an industry has been super interesting and super helpful. So I don't want to make it sound like I just brought in this outside perspective into esports and then suddenly solved esports, right? Like what I'm talking about now is the synthesis of things I've learned from a bunch of other people, not something that I necessarily had inherent to me and just brought here.
Well, it seems like you're a good sponge. I'll give you that.
A very measured and reasonable response from Mr. Winston. Noah, it was a pleasure having you on. We know you're a busy guy. We don't want to keep you too much longer. Is there anything else that you want to say right now, or any shout outs you want to give, anything like that?
Not really. I think this has been pretty fun.
Yeah, that's what we try to be.
Tell us about the Overwatch League. Is it happening? Do you have
No,
inside information?
Wait, let's make it less fun. Okay, Noah, I want you to tell me who your favorite player on your team is.
I
Pick
get
your
out
favorite
of
kid.
here. No way.
I'm not gonna do that. It's like choosing a.
Of course not.
It's like choosing a child.
Of course not.
Why is it Dardock?
All right, Noah. Once
try.
again, thank you so much for making time for us. It was a real pleasure having you on the Score Esports podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks a lot, Noah.
Take care.
Bye.
Oh, that was a great call, I thought.
Seems like a good guy. I
That
like
was
him.
really, that was fun. His answers were really interesting.
I still don't know. How does he have it figured out? How does he?
He
how
said
does-
he didn't, man.
I know, but
What?
still, like,
Yeah.
Does
He conceded.
anybody ever really have it figured out?
Yeah, he conceded that there's the imposter syndrome thing. I think if you're that age and you're doing what he's doing, you probably feel a bit of imposter syndrome. Man, I do my laundry and I get imposter syndrome. I did this.
I don't even know
I
how
just
to
realized
spell
that,
that in order to Google it.
I just realized that I think Josh is going to be on the wrong podcast because he is also an esports grandpa. So he fits
Yeah, I'm
in
super
demographically
old.
with the rest of us.
Yes, this demographic of late 20s esports fans.
Early
wish
30s,
I was
late
still late
20s.
20s.
Okay,
you
early
know.
30s, sure. I'll join you later this
Yeah,
year.
you will. Oh, is it? All right, there we go. We'll have a birthday podcast for
Oh,
for
God.
Josh.
Oh no.
Colin
my
Colin
God.
will sing for you.
So
Oh, he will.
All right, so the Immortals this year. I mean, I'm sad they didn't make the old LCS playoffs right now.
Ye old playoffs.
I know. What happens in this LCS in this next split? Like, who's going to make like the World Championship 1-4 thing?
Okay, so that
How does that
won't-
work exactly?
Nothing basically happens from this split. Everybody
No?
gets points for this. So that's actually one of the big criticisms of the spring split.
Yeah,
is
you
that
got
it
another
doesn't-
one right here.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, right? However, what I think is really interesting this year is assuming there's no giant acquisitions over the off season. This will be the first split in the summer split where we come back where it's actually all the same teams that competed in the last split. So this is almost a mini look at franchising because this is the first time we've had stability at this level. So we
And
will see.
parity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does it actually bring the teams that much closer together? I mean, if you look at Europe, they had they had some teams near the top and some teams near the bottom, and there was a stark contrast. Whereas, as Noah's pointed out, it's not as much here in North America. There is, and like every team lost some, every team won some. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to argue that Liquid and Envy were two of the weaker teams, especially near the end of the split. But they were not like they could take game. I mean, Liquid beat TSM at the end of the season.
If what we learned from Weldon Green on the last podcast is true, it's because NA professionalized faster and EU is still dependent on raw talent.
Yeah.
I would love to see, though, a version of this split where Envy had Lyra from week one and they had... No, honestly, like, Lyra is a great player. I mean, and you have to get started so fast in the LCS. You have to like go in week one, and if week one is a complete wash, you lose both your matches in the NA LCS. You're already...
Oh, with 18 games, like every game matters, right? It's
like
the
football.
NFL. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly it.
Nice.
Oh, man.
I mean, let's look at this compared to what's happening with like another game like CS:GO, right? Like they're pretty similar in scale in terms of fan base and all that. So we have the LCS looking pretty stable, and now we have this Astralis dropping out of IM Cologne, right?
Oh, yeah, this
and
just
like
happened.
Cologne has been a major for the last 2 years, I believe, and has been a large tournament even before then. And now Astralis, because the major is no longer in Cologne, it's at another venue, at another event. They're not taking part of this anymore. Is that going to have a domino effect? Are fewer teams going to be showing up now? Is it going to go down to like a tier 1.5 event? I mean, this was one of the crowns of CS:GO.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, as the king goes, so do they all, right? So
What?
But I think the question is, can some of these other teams actually... Can some of these other teams actually drop out of the event? This is an ESL event, right? ESL 1 Cologne. So will WISA teams drop out? Can they drop out? I don't know the answer to that.
And there'll obviously be a limit too. Like if a couple of the top dogs drop out, you're just going to get teams that are still going to stick into it because like, well, shit, this is an easy win for us now.
Yeah.
Like it's still 250 grand. I don't think
yeah,
anybody's
yeah.
gonna walk away from that too quickly.
Also, can I just say rip Mad Cats?
Where
did that come
Can I just say
You're just gonna say GG all of a sudden too?
So Colin hasn't been paying attention to the entire podcast. I
just
wanted to get that.
League of
Like,
Legends,
Guys,
I
this is all
just
I've been thinking about. Like
glaze
it's been a month and a half. I rip Mad Cats.
Rip
Yeah, rip Mad Cats.
Listen, I'd like to say that I've been learning a bunch since this is now episode 9, and before we get into the double digits of podcast numbers, let's
Yeah.
reflect. I think,
Okay.
yeah, what I've learned is that burnout is real.
Okay.
Yes.
I've
learned
learned
that.
a lot about team houses, the faults that could happen in a place like Tainted Minds, as well as like the ideas like the Noahs and the Weldons who are saying that it could exist, office versus like your living space,
Yeah.
and like. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, if you watch from episode 1 up until now episode 9, there are a lot of common themes that come through from all like the owners, players, managers, coaches.
I hated episode 1. Jar Jar is just the worst.
Well, we're
I love the discussion, though, about having separate spaces. And there have been teams that have done that. Cognitive Gaming notably had... Every player had an apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they were playing in an internet cafe. And I think it was in San Jose.
Yeah.
And the players seem to really like that from what I talked to a few of them about it, and they seem to really like that. So I'd be interested to see if maybe it goes more that route in the
Yeah.
future.
I mean, I always go back to this. Like, I love you guys, but like, I cannot handle
Just
you
about to
after
say.
8 hours
Just
a day.
about to say.
It's just like I need to go home and like I just want to take my dog for a walk, and you guys like shut the fuck up.
I can't
And
handle
not share a
Colin for
cat.
2 hours a day. So
It's
I
true.
don't
Josh
know.
gets really tilted really fast.
Yeah.
No.
No, especially when I flub his last name on air.
Well, you just didn't say
it's
it.
Josh.
That's a plug.
Whatever. Hey, Josh. Welcome to the podcast.
I am the only single
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah.
Josh.
The one true Josh.
He's just like Cher.
He's
now.
a Brazilian soccer player.
Sorry,
It's
the one
great.
true Josh is actually Dardoch. So I take that back.
But for our 10th episode, we should like pop champagne in the,
No, we
in
should.
the, in the room. or
Okay, well, I'm
something.
not against that, but no.
I mean,
It's like, whatever
you
we're
should be
doing,
against
no.
that. This is like, I mean, it's equipment.
Yeah, I was going to say the equipment could be damaged. by
He
that.
was the
He'd
one
be
going on
liable.
record last week saying we shouldn't do such a thing.
I mean,
did.
we'll just pop it outside the glass. You can
Yeah.
still see it.
All right.
And this is on our side. This is like, so yeah, that's fine.
Well, guys, I think we should about wrap this this baby up.
Wrap this
I
sucker up!
didn't get to do a dad intro because our call with Weldon sort of happened in the middle.
That is okay.
So I would
no, hold
just
on.
like to
You had a
quote-
dad moment just now because you said Weldon. We had Noah. Where are you today?
What?
That's not a dad moment. That's like an old
That's
person
an
moment.
Alzheimer's. That's an esports grandpa moment.
Yeah.
Just reverse it and let's.
Record scratch.
Don't forget to tune in next time, guys. Every Monday, 1 p.m. Twitch.tv/theScore Esports. Ryan will fall in love with the guest. It's a given. It always happens.
Quick getting such good guests.
Hold up and make it's true. I
Let's get
do gotta say
Thor
I
on
really
here.
do like our guests. But if you guys do and like if you have questions, if you want to get involved in the conversation, make sure you hit us up on our social media. Make sure you join us in like YouTube chat, Twitch chat, Twitter. We read it all.
Great point. We're literally reading the chat
yeah.
right now.
Like we'd love to hear more from you guys. So that's
With-
it, boys.
With that said, for Kyle, for Ryan,
for me again.
and yes, for Josh Burry,
Hello.
this is
Josh
Colin
Burry.
saying GG.
We out.